I will answer the committee's questions as best I can, but I will continue the long-standing executive branch practice of not disclosing information that may be subject to executive privilege, such as the contents of conversations with the President. As the Supreme Court has recognized, this executive privilege is fundamental to the operation of government and inextricably rooted in the separation of powers under the Constitution. I have spent nearly 1/3 of my professional career at the Department of Justice, and I am personally committed to its success and integrity. I hope that today's hearing will be constructive and help us partner together to address the priorities of the American people.
Have you communicated anything you learned in that briefing about the investigation to President Trump? Yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, as I've said earlier today in my opening remarks, I do not intend today to talk about my private conversations with the President of the United States. But to answer your question, I have not talked to the President of the United States about the special counsel's investigation.
So the answer is no. Thank you. To any other White House official?
Again, Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I do not intend today to talk about my private conversations with the President nor White House officials. But I will tell you, consistent with what I've already said, I have not talked about the special counsel's investigation with senior White House officials.
Okay. To any third party not already briefed about the special counsel's investigation who might have conveyed that information to the President or his legal team?
Who do you consider third-party individuals?
Well, it's really for your consideration. To any third party not already briefed about that investigation who might have conveyed, who you think might have conveyed that information to President Trump or his legal team?
Third persons who I think may have conveyed that information?
Yes.
You know, as I sit here in this chair right now, Mr. Chairman, you know, that's an impossible question for me to ask. I mean, I do not believe that I have briefed third-party individuals outside of the Department of Justice. I have received the briefings myself, and I am usually the endpoint of that information. In
your capacity as Acting Attorney General, have you ever been asked to approve any request or action to be taken by the special counsel?
Mr. Chairman, I see that your 5 minutes is up, and so I'm here voluntarily. We have agreed to 5-minute rounds, and
the committee.
I think that's a fine place to end the 5-minute rule.
The committee will end. Will come to order. I will point out that we didn't enforce the 5-minute rule on Acting Attorney General Whitaker. We will.
I understand, Mr. Chairman. I was just saying there might be a good breaking point at that point for you.
No, the Attorney General was in the middle of saying something. Answer the question, please.
Regular order.
Should I ask the question? Okay.
yeah,
In your capacity
please
as
ask the
acting,
question.
let me just repeat the question so people remember what we're talking about. In your capacity as Acting Attorney General, have you ever been asked to approve any request or action to be taken by the special counsel?
Mr. Chairman, as the Acting Attorney General, I am under the special counsel's rules. I am the person that is ultimately in charge of the investigation, and I have exercised that authority under the special counsel's regulations of the Department of Justice.
So I assume the answer is yes.
Regular order, Mr. Chairman.
I assume the answer is yes. You have been asked to approve a request or action, and you've said yes or no? In other words,
Mr. Chairman, I want to be very clear about what you're asking me. Are you asking me if I have asked the special counsel to do something?
Regular order, Mr. Chairman.
Is this whole thing? Well, I'm asking if I think my words were clear enough. Have you ever been asked to approve any request or action to be taken by the special counsel? Last week, you commented on the status of the investigation, stating it was close to being completed, unquote. This was said despite the fact you recognized just moments before that it was ongoing, stating, quote, I really am not going to talk about an open and ongoing investigation otherwise, close quote. So all I'm asking you is, have you been asked to approve or disapprove a request or action to be taken by the special counsel?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
I've asked the question.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Point of order is not in order until the question is answered.
We're not operating under the 5-minute rule anymore then?
Point of order, the witness will answer the question.
I want to be very specific about this, Mr. Chairman, because I think it's going to allay a lot of fears that have existed among this committee, among the legislative branch largely, and maybe among some American people. We have followed the special counsel's regulations to a T. There has been no event, no decision that has required me to take any action, and I have not interfered in any way with the special counsel's investigation.
Were you aware of Roger Stone's indictment before it became public?
Congressman, that's as you know, an important question. It is also, Mr. Stone is part of an ongoing investigation, but I have, again, been briefed on the special counsel's investigation. That would have been that would have been considered a development that I would have been briefed on, and I was briefed on that.
Are you familiar from public reports or otherwise that a CNN reporter was camped out outside of Stone's house when the FBI arrested him? This wouldn't be part of the investigation.
I am aware of that, and it was deeply concerning to me as to how CNN found out about that.
Well, that is I'm glad we're going down that road, Mr. Attorney General, because this is did somebody at the Department of Justice seemingly share a draft indictment with CNN prior to Stone's arrest? Prior to a grand jury's finding of a true bill?
Ranking Member Collins, the court had a sealed indictment that after Mr. Stone's arrest was unsealed. Consistent with all its prior indictments, the DOJ's basic policy for transparency in criminal cases is that the indictment is posted on the DOJ webpage promptly after it's unsealed, and then media outlets were notified. We do not know of any, and I do not know of any other special counsel's office notice or DOJ notice to media outlets regarding Mr. Stone's indictment or his arrest. And otherwise, you know, I really, as I sit here today, don't have any other information that I can talk about regarding Mr. Stone.
Well, given your answer even just then, it does seem concerning given the timing of this reporter's knowledge and other things that there seems to have been a gap in that discovery. And just another question is if anybody would outside this, would you view this as a problem? Because this looks like this is something, I'm just asking, as in your final days here, would this be a problem with DOJ if we're looking at the timing doesn't match up, that it seems to appear that this was given pre or prior knowledge, not going through the normal channels? Because if it was given through normal channels, every media outlet would have been there, but only one was.
Mr. Collins, I share your concern with the possibility that a media outlet was tipped off to Mr. Stone's either indictment or arrest before it was made, that information was available to the public.